Good morning.
Good morning.
This past week, I had the opportunity to spend a couple of hours in the garden at Canuga with the Good News Gardeners Ministry. As is often the case when I go spend time with that incredible bunch of people, most of my work involves simply going back and forth with a wheelbarrow, schlepping mulch, compost, or dirt from one big pile on the outskirts of the garden and taking it to the beds and rows of the garden to be spread. It is the type of work that promises to wear a person out. You get tired. Yet for some reason, I love it. It makes me feel alive. And on Tuesday, Mary Kate Brown, the living saint who runs the garden at Canuga, and our own model of grace and kindness, Carrie Byers, with baby Russell strapped on her back like a backpack, were tending some lettuce rows as I passed them 100 times with wheelbarrows full of compost. And Carrie asked me, "Don't you get tired of doing this? Especially given that you do basically the same thing at home all the time," which I did yesterday also. And I responded, "Sure, I get tired, but I don't mind it. This is my favorite thing in all of the world to do. It makes me feel alive." And as ridiculous as it sounds, having recently returned from the greatest vacation of my life, go to Costa Rica, Pura Vida, that encounter has me reflecting on what it means to be tired this week. So think about what you do in your daily life that just leaves you exhausted. And I'm talking about the things that leave you both emotionally drained and physically worn out. These are not the kind of things for which sleeping late, taking a day off, or going on vacation are the antidote for. It's about more than just being tired. The constant physical and emotional striving depletes and empties our spirit. You feel your soul drying out even as your tears get closer and closer to overflowing. You do what you've got to do, but it's not really what you want to do. You give your time and your effort, but you don't give your heart. What are those things for you, I wonder? What's number one on your list when I ask you this question? What's number two? I'm not going to ask number three because two is enough. I reckon you understand what I'm asking. Now I ask you to think about those things which you do that seem effortless. They just flow. You're in the zone. You've caught the wave. They are the things in which you totally immerse yourself. You bring all that you are and all that you have, and you hold nothing back. You give it your all, and you wouldn't have it any other way. You feel light as a feather. You feel full, and you feel complete. You look at the clock and wonder where the time went. You don't want to stop, and when you do stop, you can't wait to start again. I think this is about wholeheartedness. And I believe this type of action is the antidote to exhaustion. So what are those things to you? What's number one on your list? What's number two? What's number three? What's number 4 and 5 and 6? There is no way that we should exhaust this list. It's worth it to know those things. You can't have too many of those things. So what is the difference between the things on those two lists in your life? One takes all that we have and we feel exhausted. But the other, we give all that we have and we feel invigorated. One feels like we're crashing and the other feels like we're soaring. One leaves us feeling wrung out and thankful that the day is finally over. And the other leaves us feeling with that feeling that I've heard people describe as a good tired and thankful for the day. So think about what that's about. What if these two lists are two different ways of living? What if those two ways of living are two branches on the vines in each of our lives? And what if one branch bears fruit and the other leaves us dying on the vine? As I look at these two lists in my life, and maybe it is true for your life as well, I find my first list is about productivity. It's about my need to do, to accomplish, to meet expectations, to be approved of, and to be liked. It's about my determination, my work, my effort, my will. Frankly, it's probably more about my ego, measuring my worth and keeping score. Now, I've measured productivity with accolades, with trophies, with grades, billable hours and income, check marks on the to-do list, degrees, promotions, and positions, and probably 1,000 other ways. Now, those things have filled the shelves of my life, but I think they've also emptied my heart. The second list, however, is about fruitfulness, my fruitfulness. It's about a way of being that gives my life meaning. It's knowing my worth apart from my usefulness. It's seeing the abundance of life as a quality and not a quantity. It's having values rather than measuring values. And again, I am not separating the two sides of the church here. I like both sides the same. It's just how I move. I think it's discovering and following one's purpose regardless of anyone else's approval, recognition, or reward. It's being comfortable in your own skin. It's knowing that you belong and that you have a place. Things just seem to fit together. It's being connected to and abiding in something greater than ourselves. And perhaps maybe instead of fruitfulness, a better word for all of this is wholeheartedness. Those are the moments when I show up to life with an emphatic and thankful yes. And in John's gospel account today, Jesus says to his disciples, and I think Jesus says to us, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit. You have already been cleansed by the word, and I have spoken to you. Abide in me, as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, and you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me, you can do nothing. Whoever does not abide in me is thrown away like a branch and withers. Such branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. As a grower of grapes, I both love and fear speaking about Jesus' metaphors about vines. Yet I know that the opposite of faith is not disbelief. The opposite of faith is fear. So forgoing fear, here goes. Here is my lesson to you about grapes. It is absolutely crucial to prune grapevines in order for the plants to produce their best harvest. When grapevines are not pruned, the dead parts of the plant get tangled, preventing the fruit from growing to its greatest potential. Further, unpruned grapevines are more susceptible to mold and rot, and gathering grapes growing on untended vines is much more difficult. You just got to do it. It must be done. The act of pruning the vines is usually done in the winter or early spring, even before the new leaves of growth start budding. Think about that. The metaphor of pruning a grapevine takes us back to Lent, when we identify those things in our lives that need to be shed, that need to be attended to, so that when the hope of Easter arrives, we are prepared to flourish in the way that God intends us to flourish. And continuing with the metaphor of the true vine, think about what's done with the dead and withered remains that are removed. If you've ever been to or studied much about the Holy Land, and Bill Taylor, welcome back. Thank you for going. If you've ever been to the Holy Land, you will know that the landscape is much different than ours. You won't find seemingly unlimited trees like we have here. There's not a whole lot to burn there. But in order to make wine, to make jelly, to make jam, the things that are beautiful that we make out of grapes, you have to have heat. So what do you think the leftover bunches of dead and withered grapevines are used for? They are bundled and put in the fire so that something new and beautiful can be made. That is what God does with the unproductive parts of us that we take away and give up to God. God is so awesome that God can take those parts of us that we tend to hold on to like dead and withered remains of a grapevine and then use those things to transform us into something incredible. So does productivity mean keeping around all of the vines, even if they no longer produce fruit or make it more difficult to do so? Is a grape orchard whole even if it's been pruned? Think about that this week. And moving on, I wonder if sometimes we let our productivity hijack our fruitfulness and our wholeheartedness. We get the job done and we pay our way, but at what cost? What have you lost in your life today by living from a place of productivity rather than wholeheartedness? Now, I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be productive. I think Father Josh would probably fire me if I wasn't somewhat productive. But some things do just need to be done. It's true. But what if true productivity arises from wholeheartedness and not in opposition to it? What if wholeheartedness and not productivity was our default mode? I think we all want to live fruitful and wholehearted lives. It's what we want for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren, and for our friends. Most of us probably struggle to find it. I think that's at least in part why we show up here on every Sunday, why we follow Jesus. We see in him what we want for ourselves. We want to experience and be wholeheartedness. And let's be honest. I might get in trouble here. I didn't get struck down at 8:45. We'll see if it happens now. But I'm going to say it. Jesus wasn't overly successful, productive, or accomplished. He didn't work in the sense that we often think of as work. He depended on benefactors to pay his way. And there's just not much to go on his resume. He was born in Bethlehem, a runaway at 12, baptized at 30, itinerant rabbi for 3 years, dead at 33, resurrected 3 days later. That's pretty good. That's pretty cool. But by our modern standards of productivity, I reckon some keyboard warrior out there might question, what did Jesus really get done on a daily basis? I'll tell you. For 3 years, he showed up. He was present. He listened. He loved. He gave us the example of God as love described in the first letter of John that was read today. He connected with people. He prayed. He was faithful and obedient. He told stories about life and finding meaning. He offered mercy and forgiveness. He shared meals. He was compassionate. He touched the hurt and broken places in people's lives. He had a vision for a new life and a different way of being in the world. He offered hope, and he pointed to a life beyond his own. Jesus helped people connect with themselves, with one another, and with God. He didn't do all that much, but he made a huge difference. In short, he was more fruitful than productive. And that's how I want to live. Don't you? I want my life to matter. I want my life to have meaning. I want to give myself to what is worthwhile. I want to make a difference. I want to give priority to people, and I want to give priority to relationships. I want to be deeply connected. I want to blossom and grow. I want to be fruitful and multiply. And here's the hard part about that kind of life. It comes only by removing the branches in our life that do not bear fruit and also pruning those that do. Either way, we're going to be cut. And I wonder what that means for you today. So look at your two lists again. What would it take to move more of your life to the second list? To move just one aspect of your life from productivity to wholeheartedness? What in your life today needs to be removed, to be cut away, to be released, to be let go? And then ask yourself, what needs to be pruned? What needs to be tended? What needs to be nurtured? And what needs to be cared for?